All right, welcome to the Code 3 Industries podcast. Today's guest is Deborah Green, who is a dispatcher first with the Sacramento Police Department and then El Dorado Sheriff's Department. She's here to talk a little bit about her story and everything that involved regarding being a dispatcher and things revolving around mental health and just the things that you experienced during your time as a dispatcher. And so, Deborah, first, I want to welcome you to the show. And also, I just wanted to say, too, you being a dispatcher and then just me being a police officer myself, I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done as a dispatcher. I know you guys do not get as much credit as you should. And I've always appreciated our dispatchers because you guys deal with the craziness, just as much as we do. And, you guys really are unsung heroes. So thank you for your service and everything you've
Well,
done.
thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. This is great.
Oh, of course. So please just tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me about your journey into dispatching and how that started.
Oh my gosh. Well, I started out in the Army National Guard for as a communication specialist back in 1986.
Mhm.
Um, and there was a little loophole because originally wanted to be a military police officer, but I was too short. And so there was a loophole that if you joined and did another job skill, then you could transfer into being whatever job skill you had. So
Okay. So it's kind of like your way in.
yeah, so I went in kind of a roundabout way to become military police, and then my one and only deployment was to the LA riots down back in '92, I think it was.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, that's right. You were telling me a little bit about that offline.
yeah.
That's right. You were, I believe it's what now would you were in for LAPD, I believe Southwest Division. Because you
Yeah,
said you,
we went into Long Beach first.
okay.
And then got that all straightened out in Long Beach, and then they moved us up to Parker Center, where we became the security for Parker Center for a few weeks, which was quite interesting. And I know you've been there, so where they put me because I was communications and then also military police, they made me the dispatcher for the unit. Plus, I was also training to be a dispatcher at the time with Sacramento Police, so my two careers kind of overlapped there. So when they put us in Parker Center, my little table that they put me at,
Hmm.
imagine all these papers and a handheld radio and whatnot, right in front of the plate glass window, right there at the front, right next to the theater. So, as far as my security, it wasn't really good.
There's like zero.
Zero. Hey, hello, here I am. I mean, there was people with, going around shooting, drive-by shootings and all sorts of mayhem and foolishness down there. So, yeah, it was not quite secure, but
It just left you
it
out in the
was
open.
it was fun.
I was gonna say, I'm sure you had your fair share of stories of, your
Oh
time down
gosh.
there by the Parker Center.
Oh gosh, it was quite interesting, and just being down there. I'd never been to that part of LA before, so um, yeah. So I got the good, bad, and the ugly as far as that trip.
Right. Oh yeah, and then yeah, anytime working in LA, you're gonna experience just a plethora of different things that are gonna, you know, it'll
Yeah,
help just build you up as an all around good either law enforcement or dispatch, or it's definitely a proving ground. And kind of
yes.
being thrown in the fire like that, will make you, either make you or break you.
Well,
And it
and
sounds
then
like
and then the fact that we stood out from everybody else, so um, the camouflage didn't help.
Oh man. And so, after your time there, you said that, well, at least while you were there, that you were it kind of overlapped with, your time going into Sacramento Police Department
Right.
as a
So,
dispatcher.
National Guard, it's 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year. And um, I had to have a real job in between. So, I had applied for Sacramento Sheriff's Department as a deputy. I applied, all over as different jobs in law enforcement. And somebody mentioned going in as a dispatcher. So I tried that out, and holy crap, they hired me. So it was really interesting, and I was at the academy at the time when I got called up to go to LA. So, when I got back, it was when they were graduating. So they had me technically, graduate with them, but then I went back in the academy for a few weeks to get caught up where I needed to be.
Mm,
So, and I lasted about 11 months with them. I wasn't
mm,
quite fast enough with how, my performance, but they gave me glowing recommendations for a smaller department.
mm.
And they even hired me back as a part-time while I was looking for another job, which was really great. So, I mean, I wasn't a bad dispatcher. I just wasn't up to, because you had to do phones and radio with Sacramento, and I wasn't quite up to speed for radio with for them.
I was actually going to ask, like, just to some of our listeners who may or may not be as, well versed as like as all the things that a dispatcher has to do and all the multitasking. Can you talk a little bit about exactly, because even I'm curious because I know the basics of, the dispatcher, but I know there's a lot more that goes into it that people don't know and how much
Oh, right.
multitasking has to go on. So if you could kind of
So, yeah. So, but in a nutshell, what a dispatcher does is you have two, depending on your department, you may have people that take the calls, and then you have people that work the radios and do the actual quote unquote dispatching. So the call comes in, it's taken by the call taker, it's put into the computer aided dispatch or CAD system, and then it will pop up for the radio dispatcher. And if you have more than one radio, so like I think LA had like what, 20 some odd channels.
yeah, something
I'm
like
I'm
that.
not sure. We had where I worked at, we had two um for El Dorado County, and then we had four for Sacramento, and I don't know if that's the same. So it just covers a section of the city.
Hmm.
That way, you don't have one dispatcher that's overwhelmed with, 300 calls.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So when the call comes in, the dispatcher assigns it to the unit using the CAD system, and will either voice it over the radio, depending on the priority, or just do a what's called a silent dispatch, where she puts the officers on the call, and then it pops up into their MDTs or MDCs, the
The
computers
computer
in the car.
system. Right.
Um, and that's basically in a nutshell.
Mm.
What people don't realize is we're taking requests from the officers to, and we're working with, I had up to 20 officers sometimes. So you have each individual officer that needs something. So,
Yes.
run this plate,
Yes.
run this person, I need a tow for this, or can you call this business or to find the owner to come out to meet us. I work graveyard, so we had a lot of different things, for alarms, and so we were doing a lot that people don't realize that we were doing. So we were basically the support system for those officers out on the street.
Yes. And yeah, firsthand, it's I can attest to just how good you have to be at multitasking and being able to,
Hmm.
and again, put out the right information. Because sometimes too, I mean, this is why knowing dispatchers, I try to enunciate and I try to be as very clear with my information that I could, because I know dispatchers don't like that when their officers, aren't maybe putting out info as clearly as they would like, or not, giving as much info as that would make your job easier.
Right.
So I always try to to do my best to make sure everything sounded okay, calm and clear, because I know too you're trying to get our info, you're trying to contact this person, you're trying to contact the victim, you're trying to
Hmm.
do this, and not only us, and then there's a pursuit, if there's officer involved shooting, you got to make
Hmm.
sure that you're putting out all the right information to other responding units and everything else. So it is a lot to be a dispatcher.
Oh, and
It
it
definitely.
and also we're not just on one screen. It's not like, your little laptop. When I started in 1992, we had two screens at SAC PD, and even at El Dorado we had two when I first started. And then you had a phone console and a radio console. So you'd poke buttons and whatnot to bring up certain radios. When I left in 2021, I had 10 screens. One screen was for the radio, one screen was for the phone. We had mapping systems, we had CAD, which was basically on two screens, but we also had a internet because the internet was not can't connect to CAD. It has to be separate so nobody breaks into it. If we needed to research stuff, we had our warrant screen. I mean, it was just all over the place and double stacked.
Go ahead.
So so
It's it
imagine
is
all
it
of
is a
that
lot. Right. Yes,
that I'm keeping track of besides all the guys out on the street. So
it can be, I can see why it can be incredibly overwhelming. And again, I wish more people knew just how much goes into being a dispatcher because it is by no means an easy task at all.
no, not at all. Takes a special kind of person.
It really does. It really does. And it is yes. Um yes, I can only imagine the all the craziness that you've heard and the calls you've had to take. And, just like law enforcement or any kind of first responder, I'm sure you've had your fair share of just, you know, calls that you think about or calls that you're like, what the hell does this person even want? Or just everything, just the whole gambit
Oh,
of
oh
of
yeah,
just
soup to
craziness.
nuts.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. And so you said you did 11 months with Sacramento PD,
Yes.
and then you went over to El Dorado Sheriff's.
I applied to other it's you lose your job, you find another job, and I applied to multiple agencies, and El Dorado was the first to call me up, and I was with them for 27 years.
27
So,
years. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. And
Thank
that's
you.
no, that's that's a lot. And dealing with that, or just a constant bombardment of, the things, you see and hear on a daily basis. You kind
Yeah.
of, just like law enforcement, any kind of first responder, you're hearing the best and worst of humanity 24/7 all day, every
Yes.
day. And you were that first person that they hear.
Yes. Yes.
And that takes a toll on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And um because we were just watching this on TV the other night. The weekend I started was when OJ um, had the pursuit.
Oops. Oh my gosh. Wow.
So yeah, it was quite interesting. We were just watching that the other night on Netflix or whatever.
Mm.
But yeah, so I kind of base my so I can kind of tell people when I started. Yeah, I started when OJ killed Nicole. So
That's
there you go.
hey, at least you can say you'd never forget, like, oh yeah, that's yeah, right around the time when the OJ craziness happened.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So yeah, if you can just, take me a little bit through, your time during your 27 years
Oh
of
my gosh.
El Dorado.
When I started there, they had, oh my gosh, we had five dispatchers on a
Hmm.
shift. Um, One for our Sheriff Main radio, one for Tahoe radio. We also had Placerville Police at the time and fire dispatch. So you had four radio dispatchers and one call taker, if you can believe that.
Oh
So
wow.
everybody did kind of double duty.
Hmm.
You know, the call taker was the first to answer the phone and then, kind of went around the room to as far as priority. who was doing something active or anything like that. So there were times during my career where I would be working the radio and I have an active 911 call and dispatching those deputies to that call, which was kind of interesting.
Wow.
Um, we live the county that I worked in was a fairly rural county.
Hmm.
So we went from the Sacramento County line all the way to Nevada, which included South Lake Tahoe, if anybody's familiar with that. But we had a lot of national forest, um, BLM lands, a lot of rural communities. We only had two incorporated cities in the county, um, and they each had their, when I left, they each had their own dispatch. Um, so we worked with a lot of different agencies, you know, state parks, U.S. Forest Service.
Hmm.
Um, we dispatched DOT in the middle of the night, especially during snowstorms. We did animal control. So it was a very varied dispatch experience, which I really liked. Um, but then you get all of your urban crimes. So, you know, there was times where I picked up the phone and somebody was actively being stabbed or um, you know, just somebody, a lot of search and rescues, especially in the winter time.
Hmm.
So, and then with the advent of cell, you know, because I kind of grew with the job. You know, I started out, cell phones weren't a big thing. Um, so I grew with that technology and mapping technology and just the general growth of the county,
Hmm.
you know, because it almost tripled in size as far as population during that 30 years that I worked there, which was it was nice, but it wasn't nice. If
I get you.
um, so when I started there, we had the fire and Placerville police. We eventually lost the fire dispatch to Cal Fire,
Mhm.
um, and then we lost Placerville police in 2000. They went to their own dispatch at their headquarters. Um, but the call volume never changed. It actually increased. So where when I started at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the sidewalks would roll up and we wouldn't have very much to do throughout the middle of the night to where when I left, we were busy all night long. So, you know, it was interesting and being able to grow with the county was nice and being able to grow with the job and do all the things um and see all the changes, especially with mental health through the years.
Most definitely. And yeah, and that was going to be my next question or next topic I wanted to talk a little bit about. Um I know that there was a an officer involved shooting
Hmm.
with El Dorado Sheriff's Department that you were directly involved with.
Yes.
And if you'd like to if you could talk a little bit about that
Sure.
and what that entailed.
Um, and as a dispatcher, we're at a disadvantage, I guess you would call it, because we're not there at the scene, but we're providing that big role of behind the scenes support. So one night, we received a call about suspicious subjects in a marijuana grow, which in October, that's not a unusual thing here in California.
Mhm.
Because people are allowed to grow a specific number of plants depending on the county and the location in California.
Mhm.
So we sent somebody out, but I had that I call it dispatcher spidey sense, and I sent an extra unit out there just because it was far out and we didn't know what was going on. And I'm glad I did. Uh, when they got there, they were basically ambushed by people in the grow that we come to find out later were members of the cartel. Um, they shot and killed one of my deputies and shot a ride along um, who happened to also be a deputy from another county. Uh, And um, so I stayed with that call until the second um, suspect was captured about 3 hours later.
Hmm.
And behind the scenes, basically what was happening was we were calling out SWAT, we were calling out detectives, calling other agencies for assistance. Um, in the middle of all of this, I had heard that they had gotten my guy into a an ambulance and taken him off to the hospital.
Hmm.
And at that time, I we didn't realize he had passed yet. Um, so I just kept doing what I was doing, trying to keep everybody out in the field focused on the task at hand. Um, when they got to the hospital, um, apparently somebody in the hospital decided they wanted to post on Facebook that the deputy had been killed. So we had already sent our um, the lieutenant over to the hospital to to be there when they arrived, and he called us and gave us the news that he had passed, so that we didn't find it out on Facebook because we monitor certain things going on in the county.
Right.
Because of the situation, I was just focused on the radio. Everybody else in the room was making the phone calls and doing all the support work for me so that I could keep everybody on task. Um, and then our relief got there about 4:30. We called in the day shift to to get there early.
Hmm.
Um, the initial mental health care that we received, the short-term stuff within the first couple weeks was fabulous,
Hmm.
but there was nothing for the long term.
I see. So it was kind of a
It was like, okay,
immediately
yeah,
like a
we got the critical incident stress management stuff
mm,
within the first few days, and there was a couple follow-ups there within a few weeks, but there was nothing established for
your long-term care.
all the long-term stuff. That there was no requirement for me to go and see a psychologist or psychiatrist on a regular basis. Luckily, I had already been in the mental health care system for something else.
Hmm.
Um, but had I not been, I think I would have been a lot worse with what happened.
Hmm.
But I did have some coping skills and things like that. And when I went home the next morning after all of the fuss, I the first thing I did was make an appointment with my therapist and get that ball rolling that direction. But as far as the department, there wasn't much that was provided for us, and no follow up or anything like that. One of the deputies from our department that was on the call never came back to work afterwards.
Hmm.
The other one, he would come back and leave again, come back, leave again. Um, and then I was the only one out of that core group that stayed the longest before finally being signed out. And I went through the workman's comp system on that.
And that's and I know something like that. Um, I've been very fortunate and blessed that during my time, I never had to deal with or be an involved officer involved shooting or respond to, one of my fellow partners or officers being shot. And just hearing that though over the radio, because I have heard officers in a struggle in a fight with a suspect, and God forbid, hearing one of them get shot, you know, understandably so, that takes a toll on you,
Hmm.
and that can stay with you. Um, and you said that you saw a therapist almost immediately after, or you said they had short-term care
Well, we
for like
had
critical stress
the
management.
initial debrief that night.
Hmm.
Um, then they brought us back 2 days later for a more intensive meeting with, and they had therapists there.
Hmm.
But after that, it was just there wasn't much. The admin was saying, "Oh, take as much time as you need. We'll make sure that you're taken care of." But that's not what needs to happen. You know, I realized that, and it was like I got, emergency care with my mental health provider,
Um,
which was good, but even then you still don't understand all the things that have happened to you that that excuse me, um all the years and years of trauma that you don't realize happened to you. Um y- the amount of trauma that law enforcement sees is hundreds of times during their career, where a normal person may see one or two traumatic things during their lifetime. So we're just, and we were told to just stuff it down. If you can't take it, you don't need to be here kind of attitude.
right.
And you can't do that because there's going to be that one time that just breaks you. And this was that one time for me that just broke me.
And it's um and please remind me what year did this take place when the officer involved shooting happened?
Pardon me. October 23rd, 2019.
2019. Okay, so this was fairly recently.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, I think now departments are really starting to bring mental health to the forefront. But even then, like you said, as recently as 2019, there's this mindset still of, hey, this is part of the job, you know,
Hmm.
deal with it, suck it up.
Yep.
It's like, well, what if I start to be affected by it? Oh, well, hey, maybe you just can't hack it, or maybe you just can't do it. Either way, just deal with it on your own. Or, um, but I think along those lines, I'm happy that you were able to seek help for yourself outside of, the critical incident debrief. Because I mean, that in and of itself, when something as traumatic like that happens, your brain's still going to be, it's, it's going to be rushed like 24/7. Like your brain's going to be on a loop, and it's just going to be, you know, like you said, it's going nonstop, and it's probably going to be going nonstop for the next 24 to 48 hours when your adrenaline is still at such a high point,
Hmm.
and your nervous system is still up here like you're in the middle of the incident, and it's really not until 24 to 72 hours later where just then your brain is finally starting to slow down, and you're like, what the hell just happened?
Oh,
And you're
absolutely. And it's not just your brain, but it's things going on around you. So we had, news crews, and we had all this activity around the department. We had other agencies coming in and helping us out, and there was just so much going on that you can't take it all in. I
right.
mean, it's just so overwhelming, and it took me a very long time to just kind of come down. I made sure though that I was, doing my walks and things like that and getting outside because I had learned these coping skills in the years prior.
Mm.
Just get out and get this, physically exert yourself so that you can get some of that adrenaline out, because when that big adrenaline dump hit me, it hit hard, and you just don't realize it.
And like you said too, it's you know being in this job where you're kind of told to put everything, like bury it deep down, and you kind of have all this trauma built up in you that has nowhere for it to go and is unprocessed. And then something as traumatic as that is an officer involved shooting that you directly deal with. It's like throwing gasoline on top of a
Uh-huh.
fire, and
Yeah.
your brain is just on overload.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just my brain, your brain is just, it's firing just a million different neurons. Like, well, where do I go? What do I do? Like, how do I respond? And it's chaotic. And then it's no wonder why that. I mean, it's good that you got the critical incident debrief, for the incident 24 to 48 hours later, which is great. But like you said, unfortunately, these things, it's not solved in a day or two,
No,
unfortunately, and these
no.
things can stay with you for the long term. And that's when it's really like, I'm still feeling the after effects of this. Like I'm still affected by it, and it's debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can, because I know we talked a little bit about it offline, what kind of things or what were some of the things that you dealt with specifically regarding after the shooting?
Um, so you deal with the grief because you've lost a friend,
Right.
and a coworker. Um, you're dealing with symptoms of PTSD that you don't realize are PTSD because you're in the moment.
Right.
And I dealt with a lot of anger issues in the months following that,
Mhm.
um, to the point that um, the supervisor that I had, who was not trauma informed, um, took me down a disciplinary route rather than trying to get me the help that I needed. She took my snapping at her because I
Mhm.
was having anger issues. She took that as a personal affront rather than saying, "Hey, something's wrong. You've never been like this before. What's going on?" So I was 6 months on a performance improvement plan. Um, but also in 2019, we're going in. We did Christmas and whatnot, but then in 2020 we had COVID.
Mhm.
So we weren't allowed to go outside and do the normal things, and I couldn't go, just anywhere to get away from the situation. Like I had been before where we would go to my in-laws or just go take a drive. You couldn't do that anymore. You had to stay at home. So you're taking this person that has been uh, traumatized, damaged, and then putting them in a box for over a year. And we didn't have the telehealth that we have now.
Mhm.
So it took a few months for me to be able to see my therapist, and by then there was a lot of damage done. Um and as we went through the year, I just kept getting worse and worse. A lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, still a lot of anger issues. So I had a supervisor that was going to school for to be a therapist.
Mhm.
And she recognized what was going on, and she went to admin, and she took over the care and feeding of me, and got me onto workman's comp and got me the help that I needed.
Wow, I'm super happy to hear that someone was there to kind of maybe see the warning signs of what was going on.
Yeah.
Um, 'Cause like you said too, not everyone is it's gotten a lot better now, but not everyone
Yes.
is, maybe trauma informed or may see the warning signs that were going on with you specifically. But, I'm very happy to hear that you were able to get the help you need. And I think it's something that finally, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, or what's your thought on this? Do you think COVID may or may not have played a part in seeing like how much mental health is, is playing a part in, at least as far as first responders, like just it really I'm trying to say is, I guess, again, it's shown a light of like, wow, mental health really needs to be addressed.
Oh, I think COVID was a big part of that. I
Mm,
really do because well, and even 2020 we had all of this stuff going on, not just the seclusion that we had to have, but then we had all this other stuff going on with the, George Floyd, and then we had the elections, and there was a lot of stress in the world.
right.
And it was interesting that people realized that there was an issue and we needed to address it. And I think having telehealth also
Mm,
um, probably helps a lot because I was afraid to drive to the office and sit there in the waiting room of the mental health department at the hospital.
right.
It's like people are going to think I'm crazy, but and I know that's really silly, but sitting at home in my safe space talking to a therapist, I think was a lot better.
Mm,
And I didn't have to go outside and uh, but also I think it kind of kept me a little more secluded. But I think but because we are already secluded, we couldn't really go out until what was it, 2021, late in
yeah.
2021.
So it's like
So
you really didn't have much of a choice.
I didn't have much of a choice. So there I am doing this. Um, in 2020, um, when I went on workman's comp, my psychiatrist signed me off of work. Um, and the Deputy Sheriff's Association was able to come up with a scholarship to send me on a trauma retreat for first responders,
Oh, wow.
which was really nice. It was 4 days, and we talked about our feelings, but they showed us different coping skills and things that we
Mm,
could use to help with our traumas, and
mm,
also introduced us to different types of therapies
mm.
to help. So that's where I was introduced to brain spotting
Oh, yeah.
and um, even massage
Mm.
therapy. We also had something called Reiki. I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
what that is.
Reiki healing. Uh-huh.
Yes, that didn't do it for me, but the brain spotting was really effective, and I felt so good for a month afterwards. It was amazing.
If you can, just for some of our listeners who are maybe a little bit unfamiliar with what brain spotting might be, would you be able to talk about it a little bit, or like at least what you
So it's similar to EMDR, where
uh
you have you're listening to sounds, and what they do is they go back and forth between your left and right ear while you're listening to that. But you're also doing talk therapy, and when you get to a spot, and the therapist is the one that knows this because she has this like telescoping pointer with a ball on top,
hmm
and she'll sit there and she'll talk with you, but then all of a sudden she'll go, okay, just look at this. And you'll sit and talk and you're just looking at that. And somehow she was able to, just with my eyes moving, take me into a full panic attack and talk me out of it.
hmm
And I don't know what kind of magical mystical thing goes on there, but it was absolutely amazing. One of the guys that was there, he called it ugly crying, and yes, it was just downright ugly crying during that whole thing. But when you came out of it, it was, I don't know how to describe it, but it was just a great feeling. And also at this retreat, they did some equine therapy also,
Oh,
which was
really?
really good. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, the brain spotting therapy is it's definitely a very unique one along with EMDR because I know everybody responds to it a little differently, but
yeah.
it's basically almost like exposure therapy in a safe space that able to it's almost like popping a water balloon. It's like being able to access all that trauma that's inside
Mm-hmm.
you in your brain and kind of letting it out and letting you kind
Right.
of just letting everything out in a in probably maybe the safest way possible
Hmm.
that doesn't allow you to make it too much or go on a full blown panic attack
And
or it's able to process it with you.
right. And having these sounds going back and forth um also helps build new pathways in your
Hmm.
brain to go around that trauma. So when the brain would see the trauma, it would go around it, makes that new pathway to go around it so that that trauma is not affecting you so much physically anymore.
Exactly.
Makes it a happy, not a happy memory, but a memory rather than something you don't want to look at, that monster in the room.
Exactly. And it goes from, anytime you thinking about it in your adrenaline goes up the roof. Now it's when you think about it, it's at a much, much, much more tolerable level where it's like, okay, like
Right,
it happened. It sucked and I feel the effects of it, but it's nowhere near as bad as before.
right.
And well, I'm very happy to hear that you were able to go on that retreat. I've heard of that and the different types of therapy that are, sometimes given at these retreats. And just I was actually kind of curious. I know you said you were taught some coping skills, both before and after what happened. Um, just, what kind of things what works like for you specifically?
For me,
Yeah.
for a while now, just I've been in a meditation group and
Uh,
journaling group for the last year now,
hmm.
and that's really helped. Just the breathing and the visualization has really helped. Um, and it's not for everybody. You know, everybody,
Hmm.
I recognize everybody's different and we're all going to have different things. There's EMDR that works for people, you know, brain spotting. For me, the meditation has been working, and I'm also a part of a group called the Power of Our Story.
Hmm.
And I attend a online weekly support group through them, which is all first responders and veterans and, you know, people who get what I'm going through.
Right. That is
And
awesome. It's good to have that support, right?
oh, absolutely. And I've met a lot of great people through that. So, and it's not just like in California, we've got people from all over. So, I attend it's the Thursday group now. We've got people from Maryland and Michigan and North Carolina and Southern California and Canada, and everybody
Oh
gets
wow.
together. Yeah,
And is this anyone can join who's a first responder or
absolutely.
vet? And
Yes.
it is it like free or is it there a specific website you
Yes, for
go to?
first responders and veterans, and it's called The Power of Our Story.
Power of our story. Okay. Power of our story. Okay. All right. I will be have to sure to check that out.
Yeah, it's great. A lot of good people. And they have different meetings, different, uh, you know, meetings during the week and at different times. So if something doesn't fit for you, there's always another one that may fit.
Good. Okay. And just just in your opinion, because I know it's been seeing it from 2019 to now and your journey with mental health and being a dispatcher and just with first responders in general. um just wanted your opinion on what do you think can be done to continue to help or what do you think could be done better.
Getting, getting, making it normal for people to see a therapist on a regular basis.
Hmm.
That getting rid of that stigma
Hmm.
that is attached to mental health care is going to be the biggest hurdle that we have.
Hmm.
Just because somebody is going to a therapist doesn't mean that they have something wrong with them. It
Hmm.
means that they recognize that there was possibly something wrong and they're getting help and they're making an improvement on their life, which will in turn make it easier for their work life.
Right.
So by me taking all these classes on, um, I took a lot of depression classes and anxiety classes, work stress classes, and those coping mechanisms that were taught to me, I was able to bring to dispatch
Hmm.
and help other people and keep myself calm and then help that caller that was calling in.
Right. And being
So,
able to,
it was a
yeah.
win-win.
No, and so you know what? I think that's definitely what is missing, and I think more of that is needed. Because like you said, there's still a very big stigma with first responders and mental health. And you being able to have the tools to not only help yourself, but to help others,
Hmm.
help your other dispatchers and help, like you said, help callers in the moment when,
Right.
you are their guiding light per se. And you are there to help be that calm in the storm. I think it's
Absolutely.
definitely what we need more of. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure the background process to become a dispatcher. Did you guys have to go through like a psychological exam or anything like that?
I didn't time I did I had a what is that? Lie detector test,
Oh, the polygraph.
polygraph.
Hmm.
I had a background check like every officer goes through.
Hmm.
But no psychological when I started.
Hmm.
I think they do now,
Hmm.
but the joke was, well, if you don't pass it, then they hire you.
Yeah.
Because you have to be crazy to do this job.
Right.
But I think having that psychological exam, it might help. I don't know. I don't know what questions are with that, but I think having something like that maybe during your career also to see what's going on if you're changing at all, and even having departments put psychologists and psychiatrists on staff that are available 24/7.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking was because it feels like, you know, at least with us, the only time you get any type of maybe psychological help or you do any type of psychological process is either A, when you're going through the background,
Hmm.
or B, like after an officer involved shooting. And it feels like those are like the two main of like when, you know, the only time you really get any type of, help for your mental well-being or making sure that you're okay. Whereas I think,
Right.
every other aspect is like, oh, they want you to be fit, they want you to be in shape, they want you to do this when and really nobody really it's not talked about as much as like, well, being, in the right state of mind, is,
Right.
just as important as, being physically fit. And it's something that I think unless you're going out and trying to find your own, like you said, like your own psychologist, your own therapist, you really
Hmm.
don't hear about it too much, or there's really not a
No.
whole lot of, accessibility out there. And even then, being around, like you said, cops, first responders, they're not the easiest to try to open up
No, they're not.
because it feels like, at least from everyone that heard this, like, A, the stigma of feeling like I don't want to be a 5150, or people see that I'm crazy, or
Right.
just simply A, or, B is nobody gets what I'm going through. They don't get it.
Exactly. And you don't want to talk about it to somebody else in the place because the rumor mill, everybody's going to go, oh, somebody's not handling their job real well, and there's that type of thing that goes on, and nobody wants
Exactly.
to work with you.
Exactly. Or, it's like it's not something that, you hear a lot of cops say to their significant others, they go home or they'll ask like, "Oh, hey, honey, how was your day?" "Oh, I had to tell a mom her kid's dead." That's just not something that, a lot of like significant others feel like you know,
Right.
they can, be feel like they know what they're going through, and it's hard for
Yeah.
them. There's a lot of maybe significant others who are out there who do want to support, but they feel like they can't relate.
My husband was kind of that opposite. I could tell him anything, which was really good.
That's
Um,
awesome, and that's great. And
so, I told him the good, but the bad and the ugly. So, and that kind of helped me throughout my career. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of people that, they didn't want to tell well, I didn't want to tell my kids for the longest time until they were old enough.
right,
I mean, who wants to come home and tell your 5-year-old that, you know, some guy just shot himself and you got to see pictures of it?
right.
I mean, eh, yeah, it's not good, but I think if we address this mental health and talk to spouses, and because a lot of times they want to know what's going on. You don't have to tell them the horrible details, but at least you could give them an overview of what happened. And I've heard from a lot of spouses that they want to hear what's going on. They want to know what's going on with this person, and it could possibly even prevent a lot of the self-medication that goes on. Um,
Right. Yes.
why is my husband drinking so much when he comes home from work? Oh, that could be why, because he
E-
has no outlet to talk.
Exactly. No, and you're incredibly right. There's a reason why cops and first responders are the numbers for alcoholism and suicide and
Yeah,
all the things that go with the job are so
yeah.
high. And it's, but like you too, I was very fortunate that I have a my fiance who is, I don't care what happened at your job. I don't care what you had to deal with. I want to hear about it, and I want you to talk to me about it, judgment free.
Hmm.
And, I think unfortunately a lot of cops feel like they don't have that or they don't know where to turn to because they don't feel like they have someone that they can relate to
Right,
in that sense.
right.
But which is all the more reason to have these types of conversations and or, seek out these support groups where, you have
Oh,
others.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm very happy that you got the help that you did and you're still getting the help.
I'm still getting help, yes.
Exactly. Which
I
is
just
which
started
is great.
a group called 220, which is a online support coaching, and they have a different kind of therapy. And I've been the last few months, my anxiety has reared its ugly head. So
Mm,
um, just taking that step and saying I need some help um, was a big step for me again. So I started Saturday, and I got another appointment coming up, and I'm very excited about it. And plus, to being able to tell my story um, helps immensely. Just knowing that I'm getting that out and maybe possibly helping somebody down the road.
exactly. And I'm very happy that you're able to tell it because like you said, this is what this is for. If it means someone out there is listening and they feel like, hey, I can relate to that or and it
Hmm.
helps them, then it's a success. And that's
Absolutely.
and that's what it's all about. And this is because this is real life. And this is, it's no fluff. There's no BS about it. It comes with the job.
Yes.
And it's unfortunately a harsh reality. Mental health is not a laughing matter, but it's stories like these and stories like yours that I'm very happy that I can help be able to tell and giving you the platform to be able to tell and hopefully if it helps one person, that's incredible.
But if it just helps out one person, but I've already found that one person. Now I'm looking for two.
There you go. Yeah, you know what? And keep spreading the word
Exactly.
and help break the stigma. And that's what it's here for. And you know what? Because like you said that anxiety has been kind of rearing its ugly head lately. Because you know
Yeah.
what? That's part of it too. It's not like you know after a day or a week or a year, like okay, I'm fine. It's a lifelong journey.
It is. And there are people that can be healed from this.
Mhm.
Um, and then there are people, that that are going to have this throughout the rest of their lives. And, I'm just trying to get through this little hurdle right now. So, and I'm hoping that this will help me for a long time.
Definitely. And I'm happy to hear that, you being able to utilize, the help you've been given and be able to help others.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, Deborah, before we head out here, is there any last words that you would like to say or any type of advice or anything that you would want to sign off with as far as maybe, someone who may be going through something similar that
Um,
you went through?
and this is going to be for all first responders, to include those emergency room gods and goddesses that work there.
Yes.
Um, absolute angels. Is to a find that therapist in that first year. Um, go in and find that person that you click with. It may take, two or three tries, but get that person and see them on a regular basis, whether it's 4 times a year, 2 times a year, whichever. Just establish that relationship so that when it happens, not if it happens, because it will be a when it happens for everybody. You already have somebody you can go to talk to. Don't rely that your department is going to be there to provide you with that help. Um, and learn everything you can, learn those coping skills, find out all the different types of treatments that there are just in case you may need them. Or, and if you see somebody struggling, help them. Don't make fun of them. Just help to get them help, you know, because we're all in this game together and we all want to see everybody retire rather than the other.
Exactly. Try to help as many as we can.
Yes, absolutely. And I have two books. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
So this is the Bible. Hold on.
Yes.
There we go. If you can get it, get it. It's called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement by Dr. Gilmartin. Um, that got me through a whole bunch of stuff. And he's a wonderful speaker. I was able to see him in person, so
Oh
that
wow.
was awesome. Um, really nice guy. And the other one is through Power of Our Story. It's called Wounds to Wisdom, and it's 29 of our members that tell their stories. Um, so there's 29
Wounds to
chapters
wisdom.
in there.
Oh
Wounds to
wow.
Wisdom.
I will have to check that out.
Um, yeah, I cried through the whole book. But
And that's okay. And that is
yes.
totally okay.
But it's, and just seeing that we've all have traumas and everybody has a different story about their coming through it and dealing with it. And that's what it's all about, is just listening to other people and maybe taking that, taking everything in and finding your own way to healing.
Exactly. Because in the end, we all just want to heal, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. I appreciate you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.